Hi, welcome to the recording of the ShoreTel Connect administrative training by LANTELLIGENCE that was held on June 7th, 2017. My name is Ken Zrobuck, Director of Operations. I've been with LANTELLIGENCE since 2004 or 5. My email, if you have any questions or want to reach out to me, is ken@lantelligence.com. Our main number is listed there. Please check out our YouTube videos at YouTube/user/LANtelligence, or just do a search on LANtelligence videos and YouTube. We have, I think, over 60 videos there, and typically we put videos there where questions are asked of our existing customers and clients, and it's really a repository for self-help. So that if customers want to go and solve stuff themselves instead of opening a ticket with our TAC. And also you can check us out on LinkedIn at /LANtelligence, company LANTelligence. Okay, the agenda. Now that we're doing the recording, we might break this up into multiple recordings, but just to give you a background of LANTelligence, what we do, a quick introduction. We might not stick to these time limits, but we'll try and keep them short for the videos. Who we are, an overview of Connect, then look at some general architecture and design, or design and architecture. Voicemail failover, so we'll look at somehow failover architecture, work group versus hunt groups, troubleshooting ShoreTel, things that you may or may not know. But again, it's really to sort of arm the system admin with additional tools, additional tool sets, so that you can sort of admin the system and learn from what we've learned over the many, many years. Because we have, what we've noticed is things that we thought worked one way somehow have changed over time. And although it's not documented, we have learned these lessons and we choose to share them with you. So let's look at LANTelligence. We've been doing ShoreTel for a long time. I think we were involved in, I believe it was still the Shoreline Teleworks, Shoreline Communication from ShoreTel. There's still the blue and light gray or light blue switches. And really sort of what we've been doing is, as a company, we've been heavily focused on support, and our idea is we want to redefine the definition of customer service and support. We like to take a proactive approach to it, almost to the point where you're going to get sick of hearing from us, as opposed to a lot of companies where we will continue to follow up, push things to get closed to resolutions, because anything that sort of goes away without a resolution is another unsolved problem, and that's what we are trying to avoid. About us. We've been doing this since 1999, doing unified communications. We have an office in San Diego, our U.S. office headquarters in San Diego, California, with a Canadian head office in Oakville, Ontario, just west of Toronto. We're a ShoreTel certified gold partner. We support over 100,000 ShoreTel users in 4 countries, 30 states, and 6 provinces. Every ShoreTel specialty that they have, we are either a beta partner in it or not. I mean, typically every specialty practice they have, we're a member of, and usually we're part of the beta, sometimes the alpha plan, to sort of test it out. And we specialize in multiple deployments and advanced applications integrations. Small single system deployments with no integrations, although we do them, are not really exciting for us. We like to get into the place where we can, help change your business by how can we integrate your phone system, give you competitive advantage, and make you more competitive in your marketplace, and leveraging things in your system that you didn't know even existed, as well as doing some back-end integrations, and now with the cloud, doing some cloud integrations. So it really comes down to our support difference, expertise, proactive, so around 24/7. We have lots of customers that are 24/7, hospitals, elderly care. Even at one point it was a 24/7 operations with Knox that are we have as customers, so available around the clock, and also 100% accountability guarantee. So we own the issues, which means if you have an issue that you get called in to us, and it is necessarily maybe a network carrier issue, might be a WAN network issue, might be a WAN carrier issue, we don't walk away from it. So we will work it to the full extent, and we will get you and guide you to the right spot where you need to be. And if that involves getting a carrier on the line or your network admin on the line to sort of help hash things out, that's what we'll do. So because our stuff rides over your network, we can't really walk away from it, which means desktops, antivirus, firewalls, WAN, QoS, LAN, QoS, carriers, DIDs, all that sort of stuff is part of what makes our systems work. And if we can't support that, then you're going to have an unhappy ShoreTel deployment. Now, just as we rank up our support performance indicators, obviously 100% of every specialty practice that ShoreTel has, as a measure, and this is a little old but still accurate, I think we're even less than that, ShoreTel measures us as a partner as how many tickets we open to the number of licenses we have deployed. Obviously, a partner who leverages ShoreTel for most of their tickets will have a high number. ShoreTel recommends or would like most of their partners to be under 2%. As you can see here, we are half of 1%, just over half of 1%. And as far as NPS goes, our combined NPS score is 75. That's not 75%, it's actually 75. It's out of 100, which is the scoring where it would say how likely are you to recommend LANTelligence as a partner. And 9 and 10 are positives, 6, 7, 8 are neutrals, there's no score, or 7, 8 neutral, and 6 and below is a negative. So I think some of the top manufacturers out there are struggling with a plus 50 type of NPS. So let's look at ShoreTel, and let's look at the ShoreTel Connect. Now, part of understanding and administering the Connect aspect of it is we want to be able to understand the architecture. So what ShoreTel has done, and through acquisition, they purchased a couple companies, actually at least three that I know of now. The first one was the mobility product, which was Agito Networks. Then they purchased a cloud-based carrier, it has to be 6-7 years ago now, called M5 Networks. And they just recently purchased a cloud-based platform called Corvisa, which is now called Summit, or their Summit platform made by Corvisa, which is now ShoreTel. So what ShoreTel has done is what's really unique about what they've done is they've deployed this new Connect, or what would be called version 15 if you're following the traditional versions, is that it is release 15, and it is the same software that is in the cloud, in the premise-based system, your normal on-site, and there's extremely tight feature parity. It's probably in the 99% of things you can do on the cloud that you've known on your premise system you can do in the cloud. There are some limitations, but they're very limited and very few. So we take a look at what they've done is they've got one platform with 3 deployment models. So ShoreTel Connect on site is your traditional premise-based where the hardware is on site for you. Then they've got the ShoreTel Cloud, which is fully hosted in a data center, a couple of data centers from ShoreTel. And the third piece here is the hybrid. They're the only ones right now that can actually give you a hybrid deployment, which means if I have ShoreTel Connect on site premise and I want to open a new office that's in a remote location, it's 10 users, it doesn't make sense to bring MPLS there, but we can get sort of decent bandwidth, you can deploy them on cloud and you can spin that up relatively quickly. And if you wanted to, you could actually link the two together. And if you link the two together, it's now known as the ShoreTel hybrid. So it allows customers to say, stay on premise, expand a little bit on cloud. It allows people in the cloud to expand into the premise and to transition from cloud to premise or premise to cloud. Say that you needed to get a system up and running for a new office in a very short time, you could deploy it as cloud. And then as you started growing and started getting bigger, you could then actually convert that into a premise-based system because all the phones all are the same between the systems. And even the user experience in the Connect client is the same between the two. So it's a very strong strategy to allow you to sort of have both and really choose the way that you want to deploy your system. Now we look at local ShoreTel Connect on site. It's all the stuff that you know and love. Hopefully you love. You own it, you manage it, it's your own ShoreTel equipment. Your Connect switches, they're connecting across your LAN, your IP phones, your Connect clients, and then the appliances. So one of the things you'll notice here is what's called the Edge Gateway. Now, in addition to some enhancements in the platform, and we'll talk about the new hardware and software, they've let's say install, but they borrowed some technology from having all this stuff in the cloud, because in the cloud situation, you're going to have multiple hundreds and thousands of users registering their phones and connecting in a secure manner to the cloud. and there's going to have to be some sort of session border controller or some sort of gateway. And what ShoreTel has done is they've actually taken the edge gateway, which originated in the cloud, and brought it down to the premise based. So in ShoreTel Connect, you have the edge gateway, which is now a virtual appliance. There's talk that it will become a physical appliance, but it's a virtual appliance. It runs on VMware. And currently ShoreTel only runs the appliances on VMware. I hear that it's short, in short amount of time we'll see it on Hyper-V, the Windows product, but right now it is just the appliances are on VMware. Now, any OS and operating system can be run on both, saying that you have a 2012 server that can be run on Hyper-V or Hypervisor or VMware, either one. Okay, but it's the appliances. All right, now one of the things with the Edge Gateway is the Edge Gateway provides a couple features that are unique. And what happens is, number one is the Edge Gateway, is a reverse proxy. So for any users that are running their Connect client, which is the old ShoreTel communicator, outside of the network, it actually uses SSL to connect to the Edge Gateway reverse proxy, and this will actually proxy that request to your ShoreTel server. So I can be off the corporate network, I can be traveling over Wi-Fi in a airplane or a Starbucks or any coffee shop, hotel, and my communicator can actually connect to and register, and I can change my call handling modes, listen to my voicemails, all that sort of stuff through a SSL connection. So there's no client that you actually have to install. There's no VPN, so they've gone VPN-less, so that you don't have to install a client VPN to connect and then launch your communicator. Now, it also has, Edge Gateway has a stun server, which will actually do reverse it'll transition the voice so that you can actually do voice through here. So the soft phone that works on your client, you can convert the client, and the stun server is actually going to allow it to proxy that voice to your appliances so that you can actually have soft phone remote as well. So with the Edge Gateway, if it's set up properly, you can have your client connect remotely, and you can also have your soft phone and use the voice using the soft phone through the Edge Gateway. One of the other advantages, you can also point your conference bridge to this now. Instead of NATing port 80 through your firewall, you can actually point it to the Edge Gateway. And you can share some of that collaborative features and also the voice features of supporting dial-in by computer audio through the conference bridge. And the last thing is the 400 series phones. The Edge Gateway is an SSL concentrator. So what it'll do is every 400 series phone, the 420, the 480, gig or non-gig, has a SSL VPN client built in. So previously, you'd have to actually have a 230G or any G phone, a gig phone, to connect to the old Edgewater Networks VPN concentrator. Now the Edgewater was using VPN over TCP, and this is actually using SSL and the VPN over UDP. So it's a much better connection, and it's a much clearer connection and less problematic. So any 400 series phones can now be a remote phone and connect to the Edge Gateway. So it comes into play for disaster recovery, business continuity, even the executive who wants to work from home on their phone, right? Or the salespeople who want to work from home. That all they need is a regular internet connection, and they just connect back to the Edge Gateway, and they're connected. Now, what you'll see is virtual. Now, they've gone highly virtual in this. Well, they're in 14.2 mostly virtual, and in Connect they're completely virtual, which means, and we've done this and have customers that are deployed completely virtually with SIP trunks and everything, no physical connections. We've all done it through virtual appliances. So the collaboration server is virtual. Contact center software on a virtual machine for a long time. Mobility is a virtual appliance. Distributed voice server, DVS, can also be a virtual appliance. Director is also running on any Windows VM or Windows virtualization or VMware virtualization. The phone switch is an IP phone switch that comes in 500 or 1,000 IP resources, which I think was available in 14.2. And the trunk switch. Now the trunk switch was built specifically to handle SIP trunks, and this was available in 14.2. And it allows all the resources and the media proxies and all that sort of stuff on a 1-to-1 ratio. So if you are deploying any SIP, my recommendation is to deploy the virtual SIP trunk switch. it handles SIP differently and better than the traditional 90 or 50 or 220 or whatever you had. And then the edge gateways we mentioned before. Okay, and basically looking at the data center, all they're really doing is they have the virtualization in the data center. So that's how we can actually handle the virtualization to the users, to the end users. So basically everything we've seen, and I mentioned that we've sort of stole the, or borrowed the edge gateway, your remote workers can now connect to their data centers, which are running virtual multi-tenant ShoreTel directors or ShoreTel Connect directors. Now, as I mentioned before, the nice thing is what you can do is if you've got a premise-based system, you can actually set up a VPN connection with SIP tie trunks between the two systems and allow for a hybrid environment. So things like 4-digit dialing between the locations. I believe that you're going to see things like, if it's not already released, is presence as well, and possibly instant messaging between the two. So you can actually tie these two together, and it's two separate systems, but they'll act as one. You still have the two management portals, but you really have one system for dialing. So you can route calls, you can do inter-office calls, all that sort of stuff through the hybrid. And right now, currently the SIP tie trunks are really to do inter-office calls. They haven't opened it up for enhanced routing, which will hopefully will be sooner than later. Right, so some of the new switches. We're looking at the next generation, the 5th generation. You're looking at right now is the ST100DA on here. And again, these are all half width, 1 rack U switches. So they've done a couple things. Number one is no more IP resource trade-offs. So before you had a ShoreTel 90 and you wanted 8 analog trunks and 4 analog ports, that's 8 plus 4 is 12 times 5 is 60. I only have 30 IP resources left. Now, if it says it can do 100 IP phones, it can do 100 IP phones regardless of the number of analog. Built-in conference port, because it's got better CPU and better processor, 50% more hunt groups and bridge call appearances. You can do more analog FXX ports or analog station ports. Neon voltage message waiting for analog. They've also created a longer loop for analog phones. So you'll see a 24 and a 48A, which is now 11,000 feet. And they built in a real-time clock. And you've also got a balanced paging output with contact closure. So you actually have this little adapter here, which you can plug into your audio output on your switch, and it has the contact closures, normally open or normally closed here, that you can connect directly up to your paging system, your Bogan or your Valcom. Instead of actually going to a Bogan TAM-B, you can actually go directly into the amp with this. And that came out in 14.2, but is available now. Some of the other things, higher density. You have a 500 port IP switch, a physical appliance that does 500. As I mentioned on the virtual, based on the number of cores, it'd be 500 or 1,000. You'll have a dual T1 E1 switch. Okay, so you'll have a double PRI switch or an E1 switch with media proxy, and it can do SIP trunks as well. My feeling on this was a dual T1 E1 switch is great. How many power supplies does it have? Still has one. So if you want 2 spans to go down with 1 power supply, that's your answer. Now, in a large deployment where you've got 10 or 15 or 20 trunks that aren't SIP and you got traditional PRI, this would be great because you can lower your footprint. And if you've got a backup strategy or extra ports, then you have the ability to sort of leverage the T1. And then they've come up with a 48 port analog switch as well. So it's a 24A times 2. Some of the other things for support, 2-stage upgrades, Linux upgrades. So when you're actually downloading, it allows you to download the upgrade and then schedule the upgrade at a later time. What has traditionally been the case with ShoreTel upgrades is you update the software, you reboot the switches, all the switches check, and they start downloading the firmware. What you can do here is you can actually push out all the firmware to the devices ahead of time. So during business hours or just after on a Wednesday afternoon, and then you said, I'm going to upgrade all the switches, and you can schedule that upgrade for Friday at 5 o'clock. PRI channel tool. So one of the things in the diagnostics monitor, we can actually do a PRI trace now, which is great for support. USB port for extended logging. There's a USB port here on the front. So if you've ever worked with us or have had an intermittent issue that sort of only happened once every couple of days, one of the things was really difficult was to let the logs, just to turn on the debug logs and let them run, because they would eventually generate too many logs and eat up all the memory and the space, and it could crash the switch. So what they've done is they've put in a USB port that you can take a jump drive and stick it to, which is 64, 128 gig, whatever, and you can just continually write that stuff out to that USB drive. So you're no longer taking up space on the box, you're doing it on the drive, which is kind of cool. Someone had asked, is it powered? I don't believe so, because I think they were trying to power their MP3 player for the music, but I don't believe it's powered. All right, so this is just a high level of the switches. So we have the 50A, which is a physical appliance that does 50 IP and 4 trunks and 4 stations. And you've got the 100A, the 100DA. The difference between the 100A and the D is the D means digital. It means it has a PRI. The ST1D is 2 PRIs, or E1s. And the ST2D, as we mentioned before, is the 2 PRIs. Okay, which you have no IP resource trade-offs, and you have increase in conferencing. So for instance, the 100 can do 12 ad hoc conferences versus 6, which was in the 50, or 6, which was in the old appliances, the 50V, the 90, all that sort of older boxes. Bridge call appearances have grown. Then you've got the 200 and the 500, the physical appliance. So if you wanted a higher density physical appliance, you've got the 500 and you've got the 200. Up to this point, you could only run virtual appliances, or you could actually do a 220T1A or 220T1 and not put any actual hardware on there and take the PRI out, and you get the 220 resources. And then you've got the 24A and the 48, which has 48 analog stations. So great for hospitals, hotels, anything that's running a lot of analog ports, or places where you don't really want to put in expensive phones. You can put in a cheaper non-IP based phone, analog. Okay. One of the other interesting and great pieces about this is the DVS. When you want to add distributed voice services, which we'll talk about in the architecture piece, is you can now add a Linux DVS. So again, this is only on VMware, and it's an ISO that you download and you install on VMware. And the nice thing about this is you don't have to pay for the Microsoft licensing. So it's a Linux version. And if you take a look at it, it looks very similar to the 90V and the 50V. There are a couple caveats that it can't be an open platform to third-party applications such as TAPI, SMDI are not supported. So if you're not using that, it's a great solution, especially if you wanted to localize voicemail or provide some redundancy in the voicemail. Okay, and the last piece is the 400 series button box. So right now this is the 485, which is a color display, and then you have the button box. So what they've done here is you can add up to 4 button boxes, and it's called the BB424 versus the BB24. And in the old BB24s, if I added 4 of these central answering positions or these button boxes, I need 4 IPs. So if you had it all maxed out, this phone could actually take 5 IP resources. What they've done now is there's actually a USB, and the first one gets plugged into the USB in the back of the phone. So it uses the power from the first phone. And if you want to add your third or fourth and fifth, or second, third, or fourth, it's going to have a power adapter that you can use to apply to the phone to power it. And what we'll be getting to in the next section is the design and architecture.